Welcome to the celebration of student writing. We've retitled this event, Celebrating Student Writing, Composing in Times of Disruption, to reflect these unusual times in which we find ourselves. Next week is exams, and it's understandably one of the busiest times at Indiana University East. Students across the disciplines are working on final projects and writing papers and preparing for tests, but we are all doing so mainly from our own homes. We are not meeting in classrooms. We are not waiting in line together at Brewfus for a cup of coffee. We are not nestled into the corners of Whitewater Lobby or perched on one of the tall tables in Springwood Hall. Instead, we are in our own spaces, surrounded by the people and pets we live with, and balancing our daily work for IU East with different responsibilities and worries. This is a unique moment in the life of our school, and today we want to come together to look at writing in this moment and to celebrate two facts. First, writing during times of disruption is not new. Throughout history, people have self-isolated to avoid illness. Take 1665, for instance. Isaac Newton, then 24 years old, was asked to leave his college campus and return to his childhood home to avoid exposure to the bubonic plague. Writer Carey McDonald explains what happens next. At home, he built bookshelves and created a small office for himself, filling a blank notebook with his ideas and calculations. Or we might take a look at 1606, when playwright William Shakespeare also found himself writing in isolation. Shakespeare's theater, the Globe, was closed due to fears of spreading the plague, and the bard sat down to write. Some historians believe he wrote 3 plays that year, one of which was King Lear. And perhaps the most famous line from King Lear is, "Nothing comes from nothing, speak again." Today, April 23rd, Shakespeare's birthday, we are going to be speaking again as we take time to share our stories with each other. And this brings me to the second thing that we want to celebrate. Even though working from home can be anxiety-producing, boring, distracting, unmotivating, and more, we are not ultimately truly isolated. Instead, we are united across distance because we are all doing the good work that we need to do to forward our education, to learn together, and to keep our lives moving. I hope you leave today encouraged and inspired as I am by the stories you are about to hear. During this event, you will hear from 5 IU East students, Andrew Marine, Gracie Pell, Kendra McFeeters, Claire Eckstein, and Heidi Klein. Each will share what they've been working on lately, how being in isolation has impacted their writing process, and special encouragement that they have for us as we head into exam week and beyond. Next, we'll hear a keynote from Professor Ian Golding, who takes us on a tour of his own home as he struggles to find just the right location to write, and with issues that probably seem familiar: distraction, motivation, lack of purpose. Ultimately, Dr. Golding will give you the advice that most helped him get through his writing project, and he'll probably make you laugh along the way. Welcome to the celebration of student writing, composing in times of disruption. I'm glad you're here, and let's get started. The first student that we'll hear from is Andrew Marine. Andrew is a graduate student in IU East's Masters of English program. He works by day as a high school English teacher. In this video, Andrew shares a little bit of the writing he's been working on for a graduate course in English, but he also takes us around his house, where he finds his children are also writing. He can't help but connect his own work to what he observes in his home, which would probably not happen under normal circumstances. Keep an eye out for the pink flamingo light. Andrew likes to have that on in his classroom while he's working, but now the bird has migrated to his home office, where it still shines as brightly as ever.
Hello, I'm Andrew Marine. I am a student enrolled in the Masters of English program at IU East. I have just completed a paper exploring landmark essays in rhetoric and composition for an audience of Dr. Blewett in W501. And I completed an advertisement for these landmark essays through a multimodal project for my peers. As an online student, I have not experienced much change in my writing process. However, I have noticed a keen awareness of composition throughout my home. My oldest son is a student in my high school broadcast class. He produced a COVID-19 news package in collaboration with another staff member using an iPad in Google Drive for file sharing. The whole team worked in isolation to create a complete and compelling news show. As an isolated broadcast advisor, I could not be more proud of the entire broadcast team for overcoming the shelter-in-place obstacles. My middle child used the TV news genre to communicate course competencies to his science instructor. I found profound satisfaction that my son explored the affordances of the TV news genre to fulfill the rhetorical purpose and audience for his middle school science assignment. My daughter had an e-learning assignment about rhetoric and composition, albeit at the elementary level. She learned about the use of proper netiquette. She had to distinguish between the informal and formal purposes and audiences. Needless to say, I couldn't escape rhetoric and composition at the graduate, high school, middle school, or the elementary level. Rhetoric and composition is everywhere, in a variety of modalities. It does not live in isolation. I want to share an excerpt from my latest alphabetic paper that was written in isolation. In response to this article, I stand in solidarity with George. For instance, I have taught film literature for a decade, and my students produce much more than analysis papers. They produced a music video and a short film. In 1986, William Costanzo, the chairperson for the NCTE Committee on Film Study, wrote, "If I once regarded film study as a path to better writing, I now see film and writing as equal partners traveling along the same road. I truly view my students' music video and short film projects as equals with essay prompts and research papers. Each mode, visual and written, serves a specific rhetorical purpose for a specific audience." I also agree with George's takeaway from the NCTE 1961 study on television. Although children likely spend more time on electronic devices than on TV today, visual media is their primary source of literary experience. George said, "The English teacher's job, then, is to foster taste and critical judgment, two qualities that lift the schooled above the unschooled. I believe this is the composition and literature instructor's duty, no matter the mode of communication, written, oral, and visual. It is not written, oral, or visual situation in my classroom DNA. Yes, the speech and art instructors do play their roles, but it is our responsibility to encourage taste and critical judgment of all multiliteracies through the rhetorical lenses of composition and literature." My passion for this discussion is derived from my atypical background. George recognized that most English instructors were not equipped in visual thinking or media criticism. However, I have a master's degree in journalism, which includes an emphasis on layout design, photography, and writing in a symbiotic relationship with each other, a graduate certificate in composition studies, which includes a close study of multimodalities, and in just a few weeks, I will complete all requirements for a master's degree in English. This experience gives me the confidence and pedagogical framework to include multimodal visual arguments as equal partners to alphabetic argument papers. I consider it an honor to share this excerpt and my experience with rhetoric and composition in this global moment of isolation. This celebration of student writing is evidence that we are not truly in isolation. Composition happens in many locations and in many forms under many circumstances, including pandemics. Here is some parting advice to fellow students. No matter where you are located on this academic journey, keep your eyes on the prize. The certificate or degree is within your grasp. You will accomplish anything you put your heart, mind, body, and soul into. Be well, be strong and courageous.
Can you tell that Andrew has broadcast experience? I love all of the images that he included in that short presentation. Our next student is Gracie Pell, a first-year criminal justice major who is working on wrapping up her academic year while also being on call as a healthcare worker. In this presentation, Gracie shares a little bit about her project on substance disorders, which she's putting together for Dr. Carrie Meyer's class. She'll also tell us how her writing process and her life have changed over the last 6 weeks.
Hello everyone, my name is Gracie Pell. I'm a freshman here at IU East and I'm majoring in criminal justice. I've been working on a few things since the switch to online classes, but one of the big things that I've been working on currently is my honors theory and prevention portfolio over substance use disorders. For this project, I'm writing and researching about substance use disorders, what they are, how they affect Americans, the societal views on people who suffer from these disorders, and the current legal status regarding these disorders. I have come up with 3 online classes, but one of the big things that I've been working on, these 3 theories I have come up with are general strain theory, labeling theory, and social learning theory. I chose these 3 theories because, in my opinion, they best support the reasons as to why people turn to substance use. For this project, I've come up with a few preventions for substance use disorders. I've also been working with Drug Free Wayne County to actually implement preventions into the community through social media, and we're also trying to end the stigma that's attached to these disorders. You can find more information out about Drug Free Wayne County on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. These accounts are all up to date with what is currently going on in the community and the program itself. Being in isolation and working in healthcare has definitely impacted my writing. I currently work at Village Green Health Campus in Greenville, Ohio, and for work sometimes I'm on call, which means they can call me in whenever they need me. This is where I've run into a lot of issues because I constantly have to have my phone next to me, and this is a big distraction when I'm trying to write, read, or do anything really with school. However, I've been doing, I think, a pretty good job at persevering and pushing through these hard times to end the semester on a really good note. Another issue I've run into is motivation. I found it kind of hard to stay motivated during this switch since everything has changed. I went from having a set schedule where my classes were all at the same time every week to no face-to-face classes and online classes replacing them. So that was definitely difficult. The switch has also been extremely hard for like classes that require you to be face-to-face. For example, I have a piano class, so that is definitely different doing that online, but luckily I have a good professor who's working with us and like helping us so that we can complete this semester. Since I'm here, I would like to share a paragraph of what I've been researching and working on these past few weeks. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the NIDA, drug-related deaths have more than doubled since 2000. There are more deaths, illnesses, and disabilities from substance use than any other preventable health condition. Today, 1 in 4 deaths is attributable to alcohol, tobacco, and illicit or prescription drug use. I chose to include this because even with the pandemic that is going on, we still have a lot of people that are suffering from substance use disorders. And I think that it's important that we shine some light on this and bring some attention to this issue. However, as we move forward into our exam week coming up here, I would like to encourage writers to keep writing and studying and doing their best work even through these difficult times. I thank everybody for this opportunity to share my work, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. Our next student is Kendra McFeeters. Kendra is a graduate student in English, and in this presentation, she introduces us to the piece Thin Spaces, a fascinating narrative that she developed using the software Twine for Professor Tanya Perkins' class. She's presenting to us from her newly finished home office, and at the end of her presentation, she'll provide a link to her full story for those who want to explore the world that she made in Thin Spaces. I bet you, like me, will not be able to resist.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kendra McFeeters, and I am a graduate student through the Advanced College Pipeline. I'm an English teacher in Northwest Indiana, and I teach at the high school level. And I am working on a master's in English with a concentration in composition studies. Currently, I'm taking readings in media, literature, and culture with Professor Tanya Perkins. So the piece I have today is called Thin Spaces, and writing this in isolation was a really interesting experience. It's interesting because my normal writing routine involves going to a coffee shop in order to get away from the buzz of the house, sipping on a latte, being able to people watch when I need a bit of a distraction as I'm processing. Now, I am home with my partner and his 4 children, and the people watching becomes much more people supervising. And the lattes are homemade, but thankfully we just finished our home office. So that's where I am now. And it's a nice place to work alone and really be able to concentrate. So as I said, the piece that I have today is Thin Spaces, and it is an interactive digital narrative that I created using a software program called Twine. And interactive digital narratives are, according to Kane, it's a form of expression enabled and defined by digital media that tightly integrates interactivity and narrative as a flexible cognitive frame. So using Twine allows us to create that digital media by giving us a program that allows us to integrate HTML code. We can incorporate images and audio and different transitions. And so it gives us these moments of being able to interact with the text and choose a pathway. So what I'm going to be showing you today is kind of my creative process with regard to using Twine and creating this story. So my story is called Thin Spaces, and it is inspired by 2 major facets of my life. And the first is that almost 5 years ago, at this point, I left an abusive marriage. And I have PTSD because of that. And so I took those moments of abuse and the PTSD episodes that I've encountered since then, and I integrated those with the study of my family history, which also happens to have a lot of instances of abuse in generations past, both with women being abused and also with a few, I think 3 times great uncles that ended up murdering their spouses. So because of all of that, I just kind of wanted to see like what that connection is and how that cycle continues. So in my piece, I drew from 3 poems that I had previously written that I wrote after my divorce. And then the ancestral components are true stories from my family history. And I chose to combine these because of abuse cycles that pass from one generation to the next. And it even got me thinking about like epigenetics and how genetic markers can end up being turned on and off based on certain stimuli like trauma, and how that passes from generation to generation. The name for my piece, Thin Spaces, came from a sermon at my church by a guest priest. And he defined thin spaces as places in the world where humans are closer to God, where that, divide between heaven and earth is a little bit less. And it got me thinking about how the idea of thin spaces also exists for trauma survivors, that we have these triggers and memories that create a thin space between what the survivor is experiencing now and what happened in that traumatic event. So for the storyboard that I've created, I have an image here, so I'm going to go ahead and put that up. This is the storyboard for Thin Spaces, and it functions as a cycle, which means that as you work through the different screens, there are 2 options for you to choose in most of them, which kind of mirrors the stay-leave dynamic that a person going through an abusive relationship has to face every day. And it cycles through each of those screens. You pick your way through until you get to the far right, which says therapy, and that bounces you back to the beginning so you can play through in a different way. The reason that I chose to use a cycle is because it mirrors that cycle of abuse, and it allows the interactor to feel that frustration of looping back into it and not having any sort of real resolution. This is one of the sample screens from the interactive digital narrative, and you'll notice the hyperlinks that allow you to choose which way you go. This is toward the beginning of the piece, and it reads, "I was in my bathtub, my safe place. The bathroom afforded layers of protection. The door locked, the curtain pulled, my body armored by the tub and hot water. It was a Thursday, I remember. He had just pulled out of the driveway and wouldn't be back until Sunday night. Weight rose off of my body like steam. I could straighten my stooped shoulders. I could breathe. I was safe until Sunday. That's when I knew I was getting a divorce." Thank you for listening. If you'd like to work through my entire IDN, there is a link as a subtitle, and my email address is there as well if you'd like to share any feedback. Just a quick thing to note in at this time: find things you love. and things that you enjoy and that make you happy. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
I hope that you take the time to check out Kendra's story. Please note you do have to download it and then you click on it and it'll open in a browser. And I hope that your homemade treats, like her homemade lattes, are hitting the spot. Our next student presenter is Claire Eckstein, a music major, who will share a short piece of music that she's composed over the last few weeks, as well as how being in isolation has impacted her composing process and the way that she thinks about creativity itself.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire Eckstein and I'm a music major here at IUE. I'm a composer, so that means I write music. I wanted to share with you all a little bit about what I have been up to since quarantine. I'm not going to lie to you, creating and being creative during a pandemic is not an easy task, nor is it fun. The thing that allows me to keep my drive, though, and to keep writing is that we should always be creating new works and outpouring our hearts to our community, even in the midst of a nationwide illness. I wanted to share with you a piece that I've been working on lately. The piece that you will be hearing today is one that I am currently writing. It is called Superhero. It is essentially about the superhero origin story, and it is in 4 sections. The section that you'll be hearing today is the first section. I hope you enjoy, and I'll talk to you again here in just a few minutes. I hope you enjoyed listening to that snippet of music. I wanted to talk a little bit about my writing process next. My writing process hasn't changed considerably since the quarantine started. However, I have found that I've been making different aesthetic choices for my music, and it's a lot of stuff that I normally would not think of to do. I think this is honestly because of the stressful times and environment that we live in today. I sincerely wish you all the best of luck as we head into our finals weeks of school. I know we are all stressed with school, with finances, with illness, whatever. And I hope that we all can take a deep breath and get through it together. So I just want to say, stay healthy, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye all.
Thank you, Claire. You can hear more of Claire's music as well as other IU East musicians next week at the IU East Spring Music Recital. Our final student presenter is Heidi Klein, who's going to be offering a poem that she's written in the last few weeks. It is titled Purge Burning.
Purge burning. We hauled out boxes full of worn-out books and useless paperwork. We stacked them up 3 high, building a citadel. Walls made of legless chairs and bags of ratty clothes. She stood a little off, watching the hands of boys who tried to get a match to light the mound, not gust away with wind, and planned a path to run they'd poured on gasoline. We almost burnt the barn down once. For years the Google Maps image scorched grass around our home. Mom called it purge, the cleaning clear of junk that comes too quickly with the growth of one thin teen, the final baby's birth. The children coat the house with active dirt, and neighbors think she'd like the bags of clothes they rescued from the dump, one with a spot of unknown slime. Our grandma brings us her handmade rags. Who wants her holy briefs? Mom says she wouldn't change a thing. 9 kids, an endless flux of pets, and now all gone, all grown, all dead, except the house and dust that rises up in piles that block the sun, mice making lonely sounds afraid we'll hear. On second thought, she'd change one thing, herself. This thought has come so many times, except self-changing only sprinkles in like hay that blows from heads of hair where it had found a temporary home. The trash inside a home burns quick, but human flaws don't leave in piles fit for burning, catching light.
Many, many thanks to our wonderful student presenters. I hope we are able to keep their words in mind. Claire's suggestion that we take a deep collective breath, Andrew's encouragement to keep our eyes on the prize, Gracie's admonition to stay well, and Kendra's advice to find things we love and enjoy. And now we turn to our keynote, Dr. Ian Golding. Dr. Golding is an assistant professor at the University of Cincinnati's Blue Ash campus, and he is also the editor of Queen City Writers, a journal of undergraduate research. When he's not teaching writing, Ian enjoys exploring archives, writing novels, running, and swimming. He is also one of the funniest and warmest guys I know, and I've been lucky to count him as a friend for the last half-dozen years. Dr. Golding is a passionate writer and teacher, but he's found composing in these last few weeks to be a little bit harder than he's expected. I'll let him tell you more.
Do you remember what writing was like before all this? For me, it seems like a lifetime ago. I'd go to a local coffee shop, order the largest tea possible, and then get to work. Every day I'd write a dozen pages, all perfectly edited. 6 or 7 empty pens would scatter across the floor. I'd type until my fingers bruised. Or at least that's how I like to remember those times now that they're gone. Now it's totally different. Here I am, a writer who has for years fought for the opportunity to sit down in a quiet room and type. But now, when ordered to stay indoors, I feel unmotivated and unmoved. There are very few writers who can just work anywhere at home. Most of us have special spaces, schedules, or some sort of routine to prepare for productive writing. I've tried to reproduce it, to set up little spaces in cramped and quiet corners of my house, but it just hasn't worked. It was hard typing more than 10 words in a row when I was constantly struggling with issues my old routine had successfully fended off, such as a disrupted sleep schedule.
It's almost lunch.
It's 9 p.m.
An open disregard for quality.
Oh, yeah. Some good facial hair. It's a very respectable look.
The desire to be anywhere else. The second major issue I've been facing is distractions. When my mind isn't wandering, there's an endless wave of stuff demanding my attention. There's all those books I've been putting off reading until now. There's getting bogged down with cheap nostalgic junk I should have thrown out years ago. But most of all, there's just a general devolution into a sloth-like lifestyle.
Well, where's my water?
It's right beside you.
The third major problem I've been facing is purpose. A global crisis unseen in generations has the ability to make your writing feel a bit minuscule. All of a sudden, my project seemed kind of untethered from life. Did any of my research still matter when I couldn't even leave my house? How can I write about abstract issues when I'm anxiously rationing toilet paper squares? So what do we do with this? For my whole life, productivity meant avoiding these problems, to physically separate myself from huge parts of my life. There was the writing me and the other me, the order and the chaos. And it wasn't until they're forcibly stuck together that I realized how artificial this divide can be. To remain productive in this new time, I've tried to tackle all of them by slowly moving that divide. Instead of waiting until everything in the room is impossibly perfect, I try to write in short bursts throughout the day. Writing becomes a momentary change of pace in a decentered schedule rather than in one monumental block of time. The output might be less than traditional, but the alternative was nothing. Instead of trying to silence the distractions to write, I try to use writing as a distraction. We might be unsure about the future, but being able to craft a paragraph provides an autonomy that we've largely been stripped of. Finally, instead of singularly promoting writer me, I try to remember that this is just one part of my life and not to be afraid of bringing in the other parts I used to ignore.
Oh, that's clever. Okay, I'll put that in. That's good. Yeah, I'll put that in.
Okay, maybe not like that. But by lowering the divide between writer me and other me, my work takes on a new perspective. Given the turbulent times, it's a way of balancing the ideal writing scenario with the realities of daily life. I found it helpful and somewhat cathartic to bring my real-world experiences into my writing. All these little things were used in making this very video. For weeks, I struggled trying to capture a large-scale topic while also being stuck in a very small room. Finally, I decided to write about my daily life rather than ignore it. When I couldn't focus or was anxious about the world, I tried to come up with bursts of examples from my mundane experiences. It's been helpful for this project while trapped indoors. I think it'll be helpful in the future as well.
Thank you for joining us today for the celebration of student writing, composing in times of disruption. If you would like to share Dr. Golding's keynote with your classes or friends as we head into exam week or beyond, email me, Kelly Blewett, and I'll share it with you. My email is available on Indiana University East's website. We are so glad you joined us, and have a safe and healthy end of the term.